Hey everyone, the channel is on its journey to reach the first 1,000 subscribers. A small milestone, but a truly meaningful one. If you enjoy the content, hit subscribe and let's cross this first milestone together. Unexpectedly, even after breaking through to the Nascent Soul stage, Han Li was still so cautious. The great battle between Tian Nan and the Mulan people was nothing short of brutal. A battle of defending and seizing. Countless Tian Nan cultivators and Mulan spell warriors fell to their deaths, and the distance between the two sides was rapidly closing. It seems the fight outside is quite intense, Han Li muttered to himself. At this moment, he stood willing to help Tian Nan and do his part in resisting the Mulan people. He also didn't want to become cannon fodder in the initial clash and die senselessly in the chaotic battle. After all, this wasn't a one-on-one duel, a situation where he only had to deal with a single opponent. What if right at the very beginning, being targeted by several Nascent Soul cultivators at the same time, or being attacked by tens or even hundreds of spellcasters simultaneously, even if he possessed an escape art, it would still be an extremely dangerous matter. Only by avoiding the initial chaos, when most of the high-level cultivators and spellcasters had engaged in battle, would it be somewhat safer to go out. The possibility of being besieged would be greatly reduced. Of course, if it were not for the appearance of this blood barrier trapping him, Han Li would have other methods to avoid the initial clash. But now he had a more legitimate reason to evade this battle. During its most dangerous phase, and the rumbling, thunderous sounds from just now were truly astonishing. Even though Han Li was here, he could still feel the barrier wall trembling slightly from the thunderous vibrations. It was likely a sign that the two sides were finally about to clash. He just wondered who unleashed such an astonishing attack, and which side it had come from. Presumably, the other side that took such a powerful attack would definitely not be in a good state. Thinking of this, Han Li sighed. He turned his head and examined the barrier wall in other places again. This blood barrier was indeed quite strange. His divine sense was completely unable to penetrate it in the slightest. Moreover, this restriction clearly appeared to be a demonic art, but the evil warding divine lightning struck it, yet it had no effect whatsoever. This greatly piqued Han Li's interest. He had previously used the bright and clear spirit eyes to investigate all parts of the blood barrier, but aside from a vast expanse of crimson, he found nothing. However, Han Li was not in a hurry. The battle outside had only just begun. He had plenty of time to study a way to break the barrier. Opening his mouth, Han Li spat out a small, hazy green sword. Under the urging of his divine sense, it transformed into a streak of green light and fiercely struck the barrier wall. A loud bang was heard. The barrier wall didn't move an inch. Instead, the flying sword was repelled, flying far into the distance. Han Li showed no sign of surprise. After retrieving the flying sword, with a flip of his hand, a pitch-black object appeared in his palm. It was the 1,000-layer seal ancient treasure. Han Li tossed the treasure and formed a hand seal with both hands. After a flash of black light, a small mountain over 100 feet tall silently appeared before Han Li. Han Li extended a finger and lightly tapped towards the mountain. Instantly, the mountain peak trembled. He ruthlessly smashed it towards the distant screen wall. A loud bang was heard. After a clash between the black aura and the blood-red light, the mountain peak was also repelled. The screen wall only trembled slightly. A trace of surprise finally appeared on Han Li's face. After rubbing his chin, he suddenly pointed at the small mountain again. This time, the treasure turned into a streak of black light and shot towards the blood screen, to its center. Then the sound of an incantation came from his mouth. The small mountain began to grow rapidly in a flash of light. After a moment, it was already 70 to 80 jong high. Seeing that the peak and the base of the mountain were about to press against the ground and the top of the barrier, but Han Li showed no intention of stopping. Instead, with a flick of his hand, he shot several more magical seals onto the small mountain. The small mountain's growth accelerated even more. After a series of rumbles and shakes, the mountain peak, now over 100 jong high, was like a pillar holding up the sky. It stood straight, propping up the middle of the blood barrier. Black spiritual light flickered unsteadily all over its body, and under this immense pressure, the top of the blood barrier began to deform and bulge slightly. The entire barrier began to shake violently and unceasingly. Seeing this, Han Li's heart stirred. The spiritual power in his body began to flow rapidly. He continuously applied various magical seals to the small mountain. The black mountain peak continued to slowly grow and expand. The deformation at the top of the blood shield grew more and more obvious. But once the bulge reached a certain point, no matter how Han Li channeled his magic to push it, the blood shield's deformation strangely came to a halt. The enlargement of the Black Mountain Peak was also abruptly stopped in its tracks. Han Li stopped his incantation. He stared at the top of the blood shield, his eyes narrowing. It seemed that the idea of using the 1,000-layer seal to burst this restriction was not going to work either. The only thing left to try was the Azure Ice Flame and the Violet Luo Heavenly Fire. To see if they could shatter this shield, Han Li beckoned to the Black Hurricane. After a flash of light, the small mountain shrank to just a few inches in size. It turned into a streak of black light and shot into his sleeve. The top of the blood-colored light shield also returned to its original shape. It seemed this shield was truly incomparably resilient. Han Li turned around. He extended one finger. With a soft sizzle, a walnut-sized, light blue fireball appeared on his fingertip. Han Li muttered softly, and with a light flick, the fireball shot straight toward the distant wall of the shield. With a soft pop, after the blue flame burst open, a layer of blue ice instantly spread out. It covered the entire wall of the shield. The temperature inside the entire blood shield instantly dropped. It turned into a world of severe cold. The temperature was so low that one's breath could turn to ice. Seeing all this, Han Li's figure flickered. He arrived before a screen wall shimmering with blue light. With a raise of his hand, a streak of azure sword chest struck the thick layer of ice. The sound of shattering was heard. Golden and silver ice shards scattered in all directions. Looking at the spot where the sword chest had struck, Han Li's expression darkened as the ice shards fell away. The blood-colored screen wall behind it was surprisingly unharmed. The viscous blood upon it showed no signs of having been truly frozen. There was only a thin layer of blue frost on its surface. The bloodshed within it was still churning endlessly. Han Li pondered for a moment. He raised his hand and waved it in the air. A layer of purple demonic flame suddenly covered his entire palm. He extended this hand without hesitation and gently pressed it against the shield wall. The violet nether heavenly flame was indeed slightly more potent than the previous azure ice flame. As soon as the purple flame approached the shield wall, there was a sizzle. The bloody substance on the shield wall was instantly solidified. It began to emit a dazzling purple glow. A look of joy appeared on his face. He carefully manipulated the violet heavenly fire, limiting its power to only this small area in front of him. He opened his mouth wide. A crackling sound rang out. A golden arc shot out from his mouth, directly striking the screen wall. After the golden light flashed, a thin crack appeared on the screen wall, but a crimson light flashed wildly a few times, and in the blink of an eye, the crack disappeared without a trace. Han Li was stunned. This blood screen has quite a few tricks up its sleeve. Even though it was frozen, it can still repair its own damage. No wonder the Mulan used this so confidently, a restriction that not even the violet heavenly fire can break. It really can trap an ordinary Nascent Soul cultivator. Although he was a bit shocked inside, Han Li immediately slapped his storage pouch with one hand. A gleaming, azure, thumb-sized bead appeared in the palm of his hand. It was the Thunder Pearl he had meticulously refined. He had not yet used this item since creating it, not even a single time. Now was the perfect time to test its power. Moreover, after that thunderous sound, Han Li, inside the barrier, could no longer sense the state of the great battle outside. But calculating the time, the initial phase should be over by now. Getting out should not be a major problem. Otherwise, if he delayed and didn't go out to help the army of cultivators, if they were to suffer a great defeat, he would become a bird in a cage, with absolutely no chance of escape. As he thought of this, a flash of light appeared in Han Li's palm. After the thunder bead spun rapidly, it transformed into a streak of clear light, shooting towards the screen wall. At the same time, his body shot backward. A dull clap of thunder sounded out. Then, a ball of golden azure light the size of a head rose up on the screen wall. The entire protective barrier was struck and began to tremble violently. A look of surprise on Han Li's face flashed by in an instant. The power of this bead seemed to be even greater than he had predicted. This thought had just arisen in his mind when Han Li's expression suddenly changed slightly. A brilliant azure spiritual light erupted from his body. His entire being transformed into an azure streak and shot out. Under the single strike of this thunder bead, it had unexpectedly blasted a small hole through the screen wall. This caused Han Li, who had sensed it, to shoot out without a second thought. That hole was rapidly shrinking. When Han Li's green and red blast shot through the blood-colored shield, he was naturally filled with pleasant surprise. This green lamp flame, with power on par with the Ziluo heavenly fire, was used to refine a thunder pearl that had actually broken the restriction so easily. This was truly far beyond his expectations. Originally, he had been thinking that if this thunder pearl still didn't work, he would have no choice but to use the gold devouring beetles and the blood devil. Although the former could devour anything, breaking this restriction would probably take some time. while using the other would lead to endless future trouble. Han Li was extremely unwilling to use these things, but now, the nameless Thunder Pearl he had refined was actually able to break the blood shield. This was naturally an unexpected and pleasant surprise. It seems, the reason the Ziluo Heavenly Fire was unable to break this restriction was most likely because its essence was of the ice-cold attribute, and while the green lamp flame was a genuine fire attribute spirit flame, the two were unable to counteract each other. However, Han Li, who had just flown out, had not yet had a chance to clearly see the situation outside the shield, when several shock gasps first reached his ears. Then, all sorts of cracking and exploding sounds, rumbling sounds, as well as countless loud shouts and furious roars, all poured into his ears at the same time, from near and far. Han Li quickly fixed his gaze to look. He couldn't help but be stunned. He found himself currently in the middle of an encirclement by over 10 mages. Fortunately, with a sweep of his divine sense, he saw that these mages did not have very high cultivation levels. There were 2 at the core formation stage. The rest were at the foundation establishment stage. Each of them held a magical banner. They seemed to be preparing to cast some kind of spiritual art attack. And after Han Li flew out from the blood omen, he happened to be right above these people. Han Li ignored them and briefly scanned his surroundings. He couldn't help but gasp. As far as his eyes could see, whether in the sky or on the ground, it was densely packed with spiritual light and treasured auras. Flickering incessantly, the sounds of various explosions rose and fell one after another. The cultivators from both sides, either in small groups or large clusters, had formed countless battle groups of various sizes, and were completely entangled in a chaotic melee. For a moment, Han Li couldn't tell which side had the upper hand. Before he could look any further, Han Li quickly retracted his gaze. He coldly sized up the nearby mages without a word. At this moment, one of the mages saw Han Li silently emerge from the blood omen, and was naturally dumbfounded as well. Oh no, he's a Nascent Soul cultivator. Quick, call for the grandmaster. One of the core formation mages was the first to react. After letting out a sudden cry, he immediately slapped the back of his head. A jade-green flying dagger shot towards Han Li. At the same time, his figure turned into a streak of green light, shooting backwards for over 10 yards, putting distance between himself and Han Li. When the other mages heard this, they were startled, and also sprang into action. Another core formation mage immediately coordinated by releasing a fiery red flying fork. At the same time, he flicked his other hand, and a voice transmission talisman turned into a streak of fire, flying through the air. Meanwhile, the remaining mages with lower cultivation levels raised the spell flags in their hands, and a torrent of incantations erupted from their mouths. Over 10 fire pillars as thick as a bowl spewed out from them, forming a sea of fire that rolled towards Han Li. Seeing that these mages didn't flee, but instead took the initiative to attack, clearly intending to hold him down, Han Li was slightly surprised, but a flash of killing intent crossed his face. With a flick of his great sleeve, dots of azure light appeared. Dozens of bamboo clouds warm swords. They swarmed out from his sleeves. He casually cast a technique with a wave of his hand, splashing forth. After a slight tremble, they immediately split into several more beams of sword light. In an instant, the dense beams of sword light swarmed around Han Li. The sword energy soared to the heavens. The sight was astonishingly imposing. Seeing this, the 2 core formation cultivators were startled. They jumped back in fright, but they still braced themselves and commanded their magic treasures to attack. Han Li sneered. He casually pointed a couple of times with both hands. Several beams of sword light flew out from each, instantly blocking the incoming flying dagger and flying fork. They intertwined, amidst a great burst of starlight. These 2 magic treasures were immediately suppressed by the numerous sword lights. Wailing incessantly, their spiritual light instantly shrank into a small ball. As for the surging fire, it had yet to get within several feet of Han Li. It was annihilated by just a fraction of the many sword lights. This was not the time to be dilly-dallying with these cultivators. Han Li had no intention of holding back. After uttering the word go, the 100 beams of sword light suddenly flared brilliantly, simultaneously shooting out an overwhelming clear light that blotted out the sky, and simultaneously pounced towards every mage. The foundation establishment stage mages, although they all sent out the spell flags in their hands, trying to resist for a moment, but after the azure sword gleams descended, these people were ground into a bloody pulp, without even the slightest chance to escape. As for those 2 core formation mages, upon seeing so many sword gleams flying towards them, their faces instantly turned deathly pale. No matter how bold and brave they were, they didn't dare to block such an astonishing attack. Without a second thought, each transformed into a streak of escaping light, fleeing in opposite directions. Seeing this, Han Li, a cold glint flashed in his eyes, formed a seal with both hands, the two slivers of sword light shooting towards them, after a clear chime, suddenly merged together. The numerous sword gleams spiritual power linked together, far surpassing their escape speed. The two poor Mulan mages had only just flown over 20 zhang when they were completely enveloped by the sword light that struck first despite starting later. Although they desperately activated their protective auras and unleashed various spiritual techniques, trying to hold on. But after the azure light descended, whether it was their spiritual techniques or their protective auras, were all instantly annihilated. The two of them didn't even make a sound. Their bodies were slashed into countless fragments of their primordial spirits by the heavy sword's light. They had no chance to escape either. They were directly disintegrated by the sword's light. But just as Han Li succeeded, an enraged roar came from the sky above. Then, a streak of yellow light swooped down from the sky. Its speed was incredibly fast. Han Li's expression changed. A strange crack of thunder sounded from behind him. The wind and thunder wings on his back unfurled in an instant. With a flash of shimmering light, he vanished from his spot without a trace. Seeing this, the yellow light that was originally streaking down couldn't help but pause for a moment. After the light faded, a beardless old man in a yellow robe appeared in midair. Although his face was filled with rage, deep in his eyes was a look of shock and uncertainty. This person was none other than a great-grandmother of the Milan. He was originally coordinating with other cultivators, confronting several Nascent Soul cultivators from the heavenly south high in the sky. After receiving a message from his clansmen, he immediately broke away and flew over. But although he was fast enough, he only arrived to see his two clansmen being annihilated by the azure sword light. Naturally, he was utterly enraged. After all, one of them was his personal disciple. For someone who saw him as a junior, Han Li's sudden disappearance gave him a great shock. He immediately recalled that this was an extremely formidable figure among the cultivators of Tian Nan. He hastily suppressed the dread in his heart, while his divine sense continuously scanned the surroundings. Just then, a fluorescent light flashed behind him. Han Li's figure materialized there. The moment he sensed Han Li's presence, the old man spun around without a second thought. With a raise of his hand, a square magic treasure was viciously smashed towards Han Li. Once this treasure was released, it burst forth with a brilliant yellow light, instantly transforming into a brick over 10 zhang in size. A shrill, whistling sound simultaneously emanated from the magic treasure. Its momentum was truly astonishing. Han Li raised a hand with a blank expression. The blue light shield flew from his grasp, its form expanding in the blink of an eye, becoming a giant shield that blocked his path. After a tremendous bang, the yellow and blue lights intertwined. The giant brick and the blue shield trembled and were both sent flying back. It was a nearly even match. When Han Li saw the giant shield shooting back towards him, he expressionlessly reached out a finger and tapped it lightly. Following a flash of cyan light, the shield bizarrely came to a halt, and that saw brick, after a single spin, once again transformed into a streak of yellow light and smashed towards Han Li. Han Li sneered. A flash of silver lightning sparked behind her, and she disappeared once more. Seeing this, the old man was greatly alarmed. Without a second thought, he flicked his hand. A small purple flag shot out from his hand. It instantly transformed into a mass of purple cloud, shielding his entire body. At this very moment, a clap of thunder sounded to the old man's left. Han Li's figure emerged. He opened his mouth and shot out a small, several-inch-long arrow. The moment this arrow left his mouth, it was instantly enveloped in a layer of deep blue flames. It shot towards the purple cloud in a flash. The old man in the purple cloud had looked perfectly composed, but upon seeing the blue flame, he revealed a look of terror, as if he had seen a venomous scorpion. Without thinking, his figure flickered, and instantly teleported several feet away, trying to dodge the arrow's attack. But what the old man never expected was that the very instant his figure moved, a faint, almost ethereal female figure suddenly appeared behind him as if she had anticipated it, and with a raise of her jade-like hand, a cyan bead shot out as fast as lightning. The woman's appearance was completely silent. Like a phantom, it was as if she materialized right as the old man moved in front of her. The timing was truly ingenious, and her coordination with Han Li was flawless. But even so, with the old man's nascent soul cultivation, his divine sense naturally detected the profound danger, but at such a short distance, he was unable to make any evasive moves. The only thing he could do was to desperately pour all his body's magic power into his protective purple cloud. This purple cloud, refined from an ancient treasure, was quite powerful. He was somewhat confident in it. With a deafening roar, a two-colored light of gold and azure erupted. The purple cloud, which had seemed extraordinary, shattered and disintegrated within the light. The old man inside let out a piteous cry. Half of his body vanished without a trace. The remaining half was about to be consumed by the azure flames, completely devoured. Seeing this, the old man's intact head was filled with an expression of shock, anger, and disbelief. But it quickly turned into a look of vicious resolve. He gritted his teeth. With a bang, his mangled body self-destructed. A blinding yellow light shot out from within, instantly shooting out over 100 feet. Inside was an inch-long figure that resembled the old man. The yellow-robed old man saw that the situation was dire. He decisively abandoned his physical body, letting his nascent soul fly out from within, vainly attempting to escape with his life. But Han Li seemed to have anticipated this. Just as the nascent soul flew out, he once again vanished in a flash of fluorescent light. After a flicker, he appeared directly in the nascent soul's escape path. With a wave of his hand, amidst a clap of thunder, a golden net descended from above. At the same time, that small sword covered in blue flames also shot over from behind the infant-like figure in the yellow light. Seeing this, its face revealed a look of terror. It opened its mouth in extreme panic and spat out a small, round shield. It shimmered with a fluorescent light and flew towards the descending golden net. With a bang, before the round shield even touched the golden net, it was shattered by a spell from the old man's nascent soul. It shattered into pieces. After a flash of silver light, countless fragments scattered in all directions. The descending net was struck by the fragments of the magic treasure and was momentarily delayed. In this brief moment of delay, the old man's nascent soul managed to cast a teleportation spell. After his body flashed with a yellow light, the nascent soul instantly vanished from its spot without a trace. But in the next moment, it appeared over 100 yards away. Then it transformed into a streak of light and vanished. The golden net cast down was just a step too late, still letting him be the one that got away. Han Li's brow furrowed. He gazed in the direction the nascent soul had disappeared. He had no intention of giving chase. This man is quite clever. He even self-destructed his life-bound magic treasure to escape. Such a ruthless character is truly rare. The woman in white who had suddenly appeared flew over holding the old man's storage pouch. She said with some surprise, "That was quite a desperate escape. To think he even got past that sonic attack you secretly released. HMPH. I guess it just wasn't his time to die." Han Li was also frustrated internally. It seems that, whether it's my wind and thunder wings or the Qianlun true flame, they have already been completely figured out by the Mulan people. Trying to kill a high-level cultivator with a surprise attack is no longer an easy task. However, my invisibility art seems to be even more profound than before. To think I could sneak up so close, and this person still didn't notice. Han Li glanced sideways at Silver Moon, and said faintly, "This stealth technique of your spirit fox race, I just recently broke through a level, and to add to that, Master was up front, attracting that person's attention. He was completely unable to focus on anything else. That's why Zibei was able to succeed so easily," Mingyue said in a clear voice. "Perhaps." Han Li nodded noncommittally. Although Mingyue had already become his Qilin, "You are the only other person in this world who shares the secret of Ziping." But for some reason, he always felt that this woman was always shrouded in a veil of mystery, making him feel as if he couldn't see through her at all. After just briefly exchanging a few words with Mingyue, Han Li once again sized up the situation of the entire battlefield. This time, he was much more careful. At first glance, this place could seemingly only be described by the word chaotic, but Han Li could still make out the general situation. Aside from those at an unknown height in the sky, the 6 great cultivators who were still fighting, the entire battlefield was actually divided into several scenarios. One was comprised of tens, hundreds, or even thousands of cultivators, forming battle groups of various sizes, gathered in small areas, slaughtering one another. Most of these people were cultivators from the same sect, or mages from a certain tribe. They were used to fighting together and immediately joined forces when the great battle began. They gathered at once to fight the enemy. This was much more effective than fighting alone. As a result, it wasn't so easy for them to lose their lives. Most of the battle groups were locked in an intertwined stalemate, unable to determine a victor quickly. Another type of combat was the one-on-one duels between a few individuals, or situations where a few people ganged up on one person. These were mostly high-level cultivators or mages. The fighting was, in contrast, even more perilous than that of the large battle groups. Often, a single mistake would result in the complete annihilation of both body and soul. The final scenario was that both sides had deployed some incredible secret techniques, and exotic treasures were locked in an extremely fierce confrontation. The most eye-catching thing was, a large patch of extremely dark, ghostly mist. It emitted shrill screams, and was speeding through the air like lightning. Any mage enveloped by this mist would immediately turn into a withered corpse and fall from the sky. Wherever it passed, the mages would retreat in terror, and behind the ghostly mist, there were several mages who did not fear it. They were continuously unleashing wind and thunder attribute, spiritual arts and magic treasures, furiously attacking it. With every strike, a piece of the mist would be scattered. But within the mist, there were also people constantly waving banner-like magical artifacts. The mist was also subtly growing thicker. This left several Mulan mages looking momentarily helpless against this ghostly creature. In another area, over a dozen high-level cultivators were fighting against a creature over 1,000 feet tall, a stone giant. The giant seemed to be formed from ordinary blue stone. Not only was its body enormous, with every move it made, millstone-sized, rocks would rain down. Even though these cultivators all had magical treasures for protection, they were absolutely unwilling to take even a single hit. And atop this giant's shoulders, a mage stood on its left, and another on its right, constantly activating their magical treasures to assist from the sides. The giant, as well as some cultivators and mages, were wielding some extremely potent treasures, clashing with one another head-on. Every single one of these treasures possessed astonishing divine powers, far surpassing ordinary ancient treasures. It appeared they were either the foundational treasures of the various sects, or the clan-guarding treasures of the Mulan tribes. It was a great eye-opener for Han Li. Although Han Li had charged out of the blood mist, it was simply too chaotic, and no one had the leisure to notice him. Only the people in a few nearby battle groups did. But of these battle groups, the one closest to him were all hundreds of yards away. But even so, immediately from within this battle group, another Mulan great high masters flew out, each transformed into a streak of brilliant light, and rushed menacingly towards Han Li. Having seen Han Li's ruthless methods just now, and how he even eliminated a great high master of the same rank in the blink of an eye, the two of them had no confidence in winning at all. But they also dared not let such a mid-Nascent Soul stage cultivator go unchecked. His destructive power would be far too great. Go! Han Li had no intention whatsoever of being surrounded again. He said coldly to Yin Yue. Then, with a great flash of light, he transformed into an azure streak, and shot straight towards another nearby blood barrier. Yin Yue was taken aback. After immediately understanding something, she gave a strained smile. Her figure blurred slightly, and vanished into thin air. The azure streak was above a blood barrier. After a brief pause, a thunder pearl shot out from it. Then, Han Li didn't even look at the result, and shot directly towards the next blood barrier. Han Li actually planned to first rescue the other trapped Liaoning cultivators one by one. A series of thunderous roars came from behind him. A streak of crimson light shot out from the fleeting flying blade. Then, a burst of surprised and joyous laughter rang out. Which fellow Taoist has lent a helping hand? Su Han is eternally grateful. After the crimson light retracted, it unexpectedly revealed a man, a cultivator in a black robe with a refined and unusual face. Perfected Su Han. Han Li was a little surprised. He hadn't expected the first person he rescued to be this man. Fellow Taoist, help me block those two. I'm going to rescue the other fellow Taoists first. As the thought crossed Han Li's mind, he immediately transmitted his voice clearly. Perfected Su Han received his wish. Fellow Taoist Han, rest assured, no need for thanks. Just leave this matter to this perfected one. The cultivator in the black robe also heard Han Li's words. A look of surprise appeared on his face, but his expression quickly returned to normal as he readily agreed. Then he transformed into a streak of white light, and flew towards the two Mulan grandmasters pursuing from behind. Han Li sensed this scene with his spiritual sense, and was delighted. Pushing his flight speed to the maximum, he arrived above the next blood-colored cover. He waved his hand once again, and another ball of clear light shot out from his hand. But just then, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, a gray light flashed at the top of the blood cover. A large man in a brocade robe appeared there without any warning. He gazed at the rapidly approaching thunder bead. A grave expression appeared on his face. Han Li was startled. When did this person get here? How had he not noticed at all? Then, after sweeping his spiritual sense over the person, Han Li was utterly dumbfounded. After probing with his spiritual sense, the brocade-robed man was actually at the late Nascent Soul stage of cultivation, and he was a Mulan Divine Master. Weren't there supposed to be only 3 Mulan Divine Masters? While Han Li was still shocked and trying to understand what was happening, the brocade-robed man faced the descending thunder bead. He raised his hand and made a grasping motion in the air. Han Li's heart sank. Without a second thought, he hastily tried to command it. The thunder bead immediately swirled, about to change direction. But this action was a bit too late. A large, cyan hand silently materialized above the thunder bead. With lightning speed, it snatched the thunder bead in its grasp. There was simply no way for it to dodge. Han Li's brow twitched. Without the slightest hesitation, he formed a seal with both hands and detonated the restrained thunder bead. A two-colored light of gold and silver exploded within the large hand. The large hand and the thunder bead were instantly annihilated, vanishing without a trace. The brocade-robed man let out a cold snort, but his face flashed with a clear light, and his expression returned to normal. Han Li did not make any move to escape. He just stared coldly at the other man without saying a word. The large man in the brocade robe then looked up and glanced at Han Li. He said lightly, "You are Han Li, the cultivator who possesses the thunder bamboo magical treasure. Don't the Mulan only have 3 divine masters? And who might you be?" Han Li did not answer the large man's question. Instead, he asked one of his own. "Good to know that I am a Mulan divine master and still remain so calm. It seems you are indeed the person the other divine masters spoke of. I am Tiazhong, the 4th divine master of the Mulan." The man in the brocade robe said impassively, "A 4th divine master? This is the first I've heard of it. But your great transforming hand couldn't even suppress a single one of my thunder pearls. I'm afraid you've only just recently entered the late stage. You haven't even fully consolidated your realm, have you?" Han Li said bluntly, staring at the large man. At the same time, he seemingly casually pointed a finger at the swarm of heavy swords before him. Instantly, the swarm of swords hummed in unison, transforming into a vast, misty azure glow, forming a barrier in front of Han Li. "I indeed only advanced to the late stage a few years ago. But you think you can fight me because of that? You are truly arrogant." The man in the brocade robe sneered. A hint of mockery appeared at the corner of his mouth. "He alone is not enough. But what if you add me?" A pleasant female voice suddenly came from the side. Han Li was startled at first, but then he was overjoyed. "Who is it?" The man in the brocade robe was secretly shocked. His eyes flickered as he asked in a stern voice, "I didn't expect that in just over 100 years. Fellow Taoist Tia has actually advanced to the late stage. You truly have given me quite a surprise. I just wonder if your divine powers have truly grown stronger."